All right, welcome everyone. I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone this Q&A. One topic that comes up a lot, which I guess it's good to good to always rehash, put things in perspective, and that is what we call hashgacha pratis, or what we call hashgacha pratit, or what we call in the vernacular divine providence. Right? People ask the question, many times the question comes up, and that is, why are things going on in my life? X, Y, and Z. Where's the measure for measure? Where's the divine providence? Right? We do know God exists, right? How do we know? How do we know that God exists? Because he took us out of Egypt, right? Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God. Took you out of the house of bondage, took you out of Egypt, right? God intervenes in history. So if we understand God intervenes in history, question is, why doesn't Torah tell me over there? Because he was there at creation, that God created the world. Isn't that a better proof? Problem is, who was there when God created the world? Nobody. That's what the commentaries tell us. Nobody was there. If nobody was there, right? Who was there by Jews coming out of Egypt? There were 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, not including women and children. Right? They got 3 million people, and everyone agrees. Both the Catholics, the Christians, the Muslims, they all agree. God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Right? The commentaries tell us, how do I know God exists through that? Because God intervenes in history. Right? There's a lot of proof from Passover Seder, 4 generations, being at a Passover Seder, etc. So it's not that hard to understand that, not only God exists, but he intervenes, right? He intervenes in history. And he has the connection, takes care of our needs. Sometimes, we think he should, maybe do more, do this, do that. But, at the end, God forbid, God wants to, he can make things a heck of a lot worse, right? Which no one is interested, right? So let's go back to the original premise, right? What's the original premise? The original premise is that not only God exists and God runs the world, right? But God intervenes. We do things, there are repercussions. So we mentioned many times, there are repercussions for our actions. But the bottom line is, even though there are many things we don't understand and we can't fathom, right? Doesn't mean God doesn't run the world. So we'll use a very easy example in order to show how far God's providence goes. And that is when it comes to Shidduchim, when it comes to finding a marriage partner. There are people come, different backgrounds, etc. Sometimes similar, sometimes different. And we do understand, as the Talmud says, the person, right, is a half a soul, right? They need to find their soulmates, right? They find hopefully the right soulmate, and then their soul becomes complete, so to speak. Now, it doesn't mean, if they find their soulmates, that doesn't mean they can't get divorced. The person can mess that up, right? It certainly can happen, etc. But in general, let's understand, how this works. So the Gemara says that there's Baskol that goes out, there's a heavenly voice that goes out that says, Ploni, this person is going to marry this person, right? Or that's what it's supposed to be. Now, again, we could mess that up. We can marry, God forbid, the wrong person, a person who God forbid into marriage, right? A Jew marries a non-Jew. Very problematic. Not only problematic, but all the Jewish children they were supposed to have, they're not going to have now. So that all gets messed up. The person they were supposed to marry gets messed up, right? Their soul gets messed up. So now, imagine that's only one person. If we understand into marriage, 60, 70, 80%, imagine what God has to do, in order to fix things up. That's the matrix, right? Who's the soul now going to marry? kids, their kids are not going to be born. God has to reorchestrate, right? Many, many things has to reorchestrate, right? But, we'll make it relatively simple. As I mentioned before, there's a book called Made in Heaven by Rabbi Chaim Coffman. And, I got the book. I think it passed the introduction, right? It's a book about marriage. And Rabbi Chaim Coffman says, when a person gets married, the decision who you marry doesn't just affect you, right? It doesn't just affect you, it affects your wife, affects your kids, affects your grandkids, all these different things. So I never got past the introduction because, I thought it was a little bit intense, right? So there are a lot of different factors, a lot of different things that go on, but at the end of the day, the person that they end up marrying, pretty miraculous, right? In many ways, how they meet, all kinds of things. Certainly, in the ultra-Orthodox world, where people are going to be matched up based on, who their families are, what they're looking for, etc. Then there's a process, there's a vetting process. Check out the family, check out the the boy or the girl, you speak to their friends, different things. You see if it's compatible, if things on paper at least seem compatible or not. They seem compatible, the other side agrees, so you let them go out. And see, see if they're compatible. And, after a number of dates, they'll make a decision. Either this person's for me or not. And if the person is, to get married, hopefully live a long life, hopefully very happy, etc. If it doesn't, okay. Right, one person decides, or both decide, the other person is not for them. So they start the process again. They start looking again, etc. So I'm not going to say the process is foolproof, right? There's a lot that goes into it, but in the end, let's think about how this works. You're taking two people. You're taking a man and a woman. You're checking out both sides. Right, so each side is checking out the other, right? You're seeing where they come from, what they do. You speak to, family, friends, etc. And then you speak out the perspective, prospect, girl, the boy, whatever. Speak to their friends, whatever. And you see, but if you think about it, there's only so much information you can get. But if you think about it, what goes on? Well, it's an unbelievable thing, because here you have people maybe not exactly from the same background, right? Maybe similar background, very similar background. Maybe the families are similar. But if you think how, where people are, and God has to orchestrate that He wants these two people to meet, these two people to get married, right? And let's say, all things being equal, that's what happens. So they could be different ends of the world. They could be, they could be in the same place. And God is going to put them together. Now, the question would be, how do they get there? How do they get there to that place? So each one's going to have their story. Maybe the story will be similar. Maybe the story will be different. Right? But everyone's going to have a story. Which events led to which decisions, which led to where they are. Right? So now, when you put these pieces together, and every person has their story, where they ended up, with this place to that place, where they were in the process, being religious, they were born religious, not born religious, had easier time in school, not like, there are a million different factors. There are a lot of different factors going on, right, over here. You got to check out the family, you got to check out the person, and all these different things. So now, and let's say two people meet, they meet a number of times. They decide, okay, we want to get married, right? They decide, they want to get married. So now you think, go back and retrace your steps. A drop. When you retrace the steps, and you see what led you to go to, to X place or Y place or whatever a person did taking those steps, both sides may not have taken the exact same steps. They definitely may not have taken the exact same steps, but they ended up in a certain place. Now, by ending up in a certain place, and having a certain background, in this and that, and then you put the two people together and let's say it works. Why is that not an unbelievable miracle here? Right? It's an unbelievable miracle, no matter how you slice it. Right? People in common. Let's say, when someone decides, for whatever reason, to suggest such a person, they know they have a family, whatever. There are a lot of things, right? There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things going on that, are above nature. Right? They're above nature in general. Now, you can trace things back. You can connect the dots, right? But the irony of ironies is when you connect the dots, a person can be, let's say, a family friend of somebody for years and years, right? You're not related, through marriage or whatever. And then, someone makes an idea, for a match between the two families or a relative, of that family. And let's say it goes, right? So, but, you don't have to check out the family that much because you already know about them. So you got to check out the prospective person, whatever it is, and go through those channels. Now you see something like that, and then you see, wow, now you got a lot of people in common, right? You have a tremendous amount of people in common. This one knows that one, this other one knows someone else. Very small Jewish community, in general. So, playing that type of geography is it's really an unbelievable thing. So when you see something like this, and you see how it goes, right? And you take it step by step. Now, I've asked this question many times, right? Once, I had my learning center in Beit Shemesh. So, I gave a shmooze once speaking about this and said everyone has a story. First of all, how they got to where they live and how they got to me, right? Everyone has a story. Some are similar, some are less similar, let's say. But the bottom line is everyone's got a story. Everyone's got a story. So when you go back and you retrace the steps, the steps are not the same. They're definitely not the same. They may be similar, right? But for many people, the steps are not the same. And since the steps are not the same, you got to ask the question, how did everybody end up here? Right? Same thing. People say, I was praying one day, I needed someone to teach me, a mentor, this, that. And all of a sudden, my thing came on their feet, right? Or I contacted them or someone, whatever. Everyone's got a story, right? Some of the stories are similar, some not. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, when we retrace the steps, and we see, it is nothing short. There are many things, many things that are nothing short of 100%, being miraculous. There are no coincidences, right? We don't believe in coincidences. There's no such thing. Now, we may not understand events and how they interact, in different things. But in the end, there is a plan. There is a divine plan. Problem is, we're not privy to it. Right? So my own life, right? Most people know. My daughter just got engaged this week. So, how I ended up where I am today, being, thrown around the world and this and that. If I would have stayed living in Beit Shemesh, my last daughter that got married and this one, most likely would not have met who they were supposed to be. Right? They wouldn't have. It's just, where I lived and different things. I'm not saying it couldn't have happened, in general. But according to nature, it probably, it should never have happened. The fact I live where I live now, right? And I mentioned one of my classes this week that the parents of my son-in-law and the parents of my daughter's prospective in-laws right now live right next to each other. Now, what are the odds of that? It's pretty small, right? It's very small. Now, if I look back, I just use myself as an example because it's a good example to use. I could use others as well. For the last 17 years, there's been an odyssey. Been a tremendous odyssey. Been here, been there, different places. Where I live now is one place I've lived the longest. I've lived the longest amount of time. So the fact I ended up here of all places, I took a chance. When I came from America, I heard about the community. Someone found me an apartment and said, okay, try and get my kids into school. We'll see where it goes. I've been here 13 years. Okay. Now, with the 17-year odyssey, being around the world and this and that, and everything that happened, the fact I ended up where I am now could very well be. I mean, it seems pretty clear. You got to be blind not to see it. It's pretty clear. I'm where I am now in order that till my kids get married. That's what it shows. It shows clear. Unbelievable divine providence. There's no question. No question. You could say, oh, it's an interesting coincidence. Okay. I could have ended up in different places. Outside of Jerusalem when I came back. Could end up in the same place. What are the odds? The odds are very, very slim. Very, very slim. So you take something like that and say, okay, so I had to be tossed around like a rag doll. I had to go from here to there and all kinds of other things, go through this whole odyssey for 17 years, end up coming back, and this is what happens. Now, would I have thought of that in a million years? Never. First of all, I never thought I was coming back. Second of all, obviously God has his ways, right? But when you look at it in the bigger scheme of things, the dots connect. Now, I don't know why I had to be here to do this, to do that, to do the other thing, whatever. But, trying to figure out that's a moot point. It doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, that's the end result. That is the end result. So would I have wished certain other things would have turned out differently? 100%. 100%. But they didn't. So even if they didn't, and now I look back and say, oh, look, it was like a ping pong ball, suffered like this, suffered like that, all these other things. And now what happened in the end? What happened in the end is, two of my daughters, marrying people in the same neighborhood. And they happen to be neighbors and happen to be unbelievable families. So the odds of that, again, someone could say, well, I can put that in perspective. I can put on my calculator right now and tell you it's maybe 1 in 150,000 or 1 in, 2 million. Someone could put it in a number of perspective. You know what? It doesn't really matter what the numbers are because the numbers are infinitesimally small, almost non-existent. Something like that should happen. Right. So now someone would say, okay, so what's the measure for measure over here? And the answer is, I don't know. And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. You know why? Because whatever happened and how it happened and whatever the end result was, it ended up putting things into motion. This led to this, A led to B, B led to C, C led to D, and this is what happened. Now, does that mean it's not divine providence? Doesn't mean that at all. Of course it's divine providence, right? Certainly by marriage partners, we see that clear as day, right? It's obvious. Right? In so many different ways, not just by me, I've seen it by other people as well. But the point is, the details, see, we get lost in the details. We think, okay, going through this and going through that, and this is so unbelievably hard. So why am I going through it? The answer is, well, we don't know. We don't know. It's very hard to fathom. It's very hard to understand. You got to give God a little bit of patience over here. Rome wasn't built in a day. God's busy making matches and doing different things. And if doors get closed, other doors get open. Some doors may stay slammed shut, for a while. And I can tell you from experience, I had a lot of doors slammed shut, certainly over the last 17 years. When I say slammed, I mean slammed, meaning God says, okay, I'm going to put you through the ringer, but not just any ringer. I'm going to grind you. Sometimes it was better. Sometimes it was worse. And you're thinking, okay, I'm putting my best foot forward. I'm getting goose eggs. Nothing's going. Nothing. I mean, thank God I had health. Wasn't starving. Had a roof over my head. There were many things to be thankful for. But when you look at the bigger scheme of things, you're like, throw in the towel. It's over. Like I used to say many years ago, when things were going really well, anything I touched turned to gold. It was gold. Anything I did, just went. And it was, it was unbelievable. And that all stopped. That all stopped in a very dramatic way. in a very, very dramatic way. I didn't complain. I went through a lot of suffering. I don't think there's any question about that. At the end of the day, like I said, some things, were easy to deal with. Some things were more difficult to deal with. But, from that time, for a long while, did this? Nope, got slammed. Did that? Nope, got slammed. Did other things? Again, it was up and down. It was mostly down, though. So the question is, okay, so, I said, my prayers on a daily basis were, I probably deserve a lot worse. Probably a heck of a lot worse. You're the one in charge. God, you're the one in charge. That was my mantra. You're the one in charge. So if you want things to change, it'll change. I'm putting my best foot forward. That's what I was obligated to do. Right? I had to try and make ends meet, do different things, whatever it was. And then like a lot of times, things could have changed overnight. God threw me a proverbial bone and he said, you know what? I'm going to show you things can change overnight. But it didn't. It didn't happen. It was like a tease. It was like a friend of mine would say, oh, here comes the bus. Nope, it's a tease bus. Looks the same, but it's a different bus. Right? So here, what is God saying? God saying, I can change your mind, so I can change everything that's going on in your life in 1 second. In 1 second. But he didn't do it. Right? It looked like this could happen, that could happen, the other thing could happen. Right? And then nothing happened. Right? But what did it show? It was a little bit aggravating. But what did it show? You know what it showed? It showed that God can do anything. He can do anything. Right? Then other things started to change. Things started to open up, and then things got slammed again. According to nature. It's all according to nature. Right? 2008, everyone knows. Right? The whole crisis, with the banks and housing and all that. That's when I came back to Israel. That's when I ended up coming back. I figured if I'm going to suffer, I might as well suffer here. Wasn't happy where I was, whatever. So I figured, okay, let me come back. Suffered also, for a number of years. Sometimes it was better, sometimes worse, whatever. But, if a person's down, a person's not down forever. But the problem is, a person can go through whatever they go through. They can go through it 6 months. It could be a year. It could be 5 years. It could be as long as God wants to, right? As long as he wants to permeate that. And then either it ends or it slowly ends or things change. Certain things changed, and then, it's a whole different world. And then got slammed again. Right? So, it's been up and down, right? Which probably a lot of people, go through. When it comes to, stability in this world today, it's very hard, right? Very hard to find, constant stability. We don't have it. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. And you have other issues. You have car issues. You have, could have health issues. Could have all kinds of different things, right? Well, what's the point? So the point is, with all that, what could happen to a person? Get broken. Easily could get broken, right? For me, the hardest thing was, is that I wanted to do what I wanted to do. What I was very good at, I couldn't do it. Right? Very hard to do. So, that's a very hard thing to take. Right? If a person's qualified to do something, they want to use all their talents and they can't, and they're, you got two hands held behind your back, and you say, okay, so some people said, which was very hard to hear, is that maybe God doesn't want you to do that now. He doesn't want you to use these talents. He wants you to use other talents. Do other things. But if this is what I'm born and bred to do, why not? It's a legitimate question. Why not? So some people answered, it's not meant to be right now. That's all what you're meant to be doing. Okay. Right? It's a very hard thing to take. Very, very hard thing to take. But, at the end of the day, for a long time, every last thing was just, slam. It's like, I'm not even gonna say like a bad boxer. The person is, it's like you're just taking every single punch to the head, into the chin. You just get knocked down again and again and again, and the third time. Sometimes you get up a little bit, you catch your breath, and you get knocked down 3 more times. It's demoralizing. 100%, it's demoralizing. So someone's going to ask, right? I'll take some questions in a second. Someone's going to ask, so how'd you get out of bed every day? There are other factors involved I'm not going to go into, right? Worse things that were in my face every week. It's bad enough when you're down, but it's worse when people kick you down as well at the same time. Not like, oh, it must be so hard, must be so difficult. Maybe we should help you. Maybe, you should be doing this. You should have been doing that. I got nailed left and right. Oh, you had money, you shouldn't have done what you did. You should have done this. You don't have money, you should have been doing this and doing. Can't win. It's a no-win situation. Right? So it's bad enough you're having a hard time. And then people come out of the woodwork to, they're playing Monday, backseat quarterback. Right? They're saying, oh, you should have done this. Oh, you should have done that. And my grandmother had wheels, should be a bus. Like, everyone's a prophet over here, but no one's lifting a finger. No, no one's doing anything. It reminds me when I was in New York and I was running for the train, told this story before also. I was in a rush running for the train. I put my token in and my token got stuck. Right? I wasn't paying attention, and it got stuck and it jammed. Right? So I'm running like 50 miles an hour. I put the thing in and it jammed. So I went flying like 30 feet. So I was like, I was like dusting myself off. Someone looked over. It's like, wow, that looked like it hurt. He just kept walking. Okay, this is New York, right? Maybe in other places people would help me out, but whatever. But, I said, I think I'm in the wrong place over here. But when you say, how much worse could it be? We don't ask for that. We don't open up our mouth. God can make it a lot worse. He can make it a lot worse, right? But at the end of the day, he can change anything. He can change anything at the bat of an eyelash. But what's hard is when a person gets hit and they get hit and they get hit, and then other people just knock you down while you're down. And I told someone this. Someone made a comment, whatever, nasty comment. And my only thing I answered was, you never hit somebody when they're down. You don't hit them when they're down. You try and help them, try and give them chizuk, try and give them strength, whatever. But you don't bash someone when they're already being bashed 20 times, over. So the other hard part of all this was, as I mentioned, this was an odyssey for 17 years. There has been, a certain clarity now, over the last year or whatever. So certainly certain aspects of that trial is gone, right? But for 17 years, this thing was in my face, on a weekly basis. So, as my Rebbe wants about this, I said, I don't understand. Person gets a trial, they go through a hard time. It ends at some point. At some point it ends, right? Or it gets less or whatever. I said, I want to know, just give me a simple answer. Bad enough I have to go through it. Okay. But even if you have to go through it, why do I have to get hit upside the head on a weekly basis? Why do I have to have my face pushed in it? Why? I understand it's a trial, right? A very difficult trial. I'm not going to go through what it was, right? But an extremely difficult trial. So, eventually it dissipates. Eventually it gets less, and it gets less, and eventually it should go away. Now the question is how you're gonna have to deal with it. But if the thing is in your face and you have to hear it on a regular basis, it's a little hard to take, right? Even I said to myself, if I was sitting on top of the world and everything was good, it's a lot easier to deal with. But if you're not on the top of the world and you're struggling and you're suffering, and other people living the life of Riley, seemingly at your expense, that's a little bit hard to take. A little bit hard to take. Maybe didn't give me an answer. They didn't give me an answer. So I didn't have an answer, but it's a difficult thing to fathom. Very, very, very difficult thing to fathom. So someone could say, okay, with all that, it must have been very hard, right? It must have been very hard, right? And, and it was. But what did it do? What essentially did it do at the end? made me realize one major thing. And that is just like by the Holocaust. What do we understand about the Holocaust? We understand about the Holocaust, you never, ever, ever rely on men. Ever. Not whether the family, friends, whatever, there's only one person, one being you can rely on, that's God himself. Because other people won't come through. You can't rely on them. Right? Impossible to rely on. Okay, you can try. Maybe they'll help you. Maybe they won't. Whatever the case is. But the reality is, they're not in control. God is the one in control. He's the one in control. So, one of the messages, I think, and I could be wrong, but one of the messages I think was, certainly for me, is you can't rely on anybody. People can empathize, this, that. But the reality is, family, not family, you can't rely on anybody. The only person you can rely on is God himself. And he's not a person, but he's the one you laid out to. Right? And you're going to say, listen, I did this, I did that, I did the other thing wrong. Many things wrong. You are the one in control. I'm not in control. Right? Totally not in control. So, after a long time, I had to get that message. And I had to learn it the hard way. But now in hindsight, because we can only see it in hindsight, right? In hindsight, these were real difficult things to deal with in many, many different ways. Now looking back and seeing all that, well, what happened? That led me back to where I am now. It led me back to the promised land, right? To the Holy Land. And coming here wasn't easy. I had kids, I'd ask a lot of questions about, where my kids were holding, and they're learning and the language and, different things. So my kids needed tutors for a year just to, get through the Hebrew and whatever. My younger kids were fine. My older kids pretty much were fine. I had 2 kids who had issues, but, that was only for a year. And, thank God it worked itself out. But it was a risk. No question, it was a risk, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy being back here and, for a lot of different reasons. But in the end, after a certain amount of time, things started to turn. Right? Even though I was going through other things. Things started to turn. My oldest daughter got married. That was a pretty big miracle where money came for that. But, my oldest daughter got married. Then, and then, I had 2 other kids get married over the years, over the last 3 years, right? But what happened? I ended up where I am. Again, I'll call it a little bit of a fluke, that I've been here for so long, but I took a chance coming here. Community sounded like it'd be the perfect place, in different ways, and it worked out, But in the end, what happened? 2 of my, one of my. Sorry, my second daughter. My second daughter got married, and she married someone I know, the family 30 years. This person happened to pray next to me in the yeshiva where I pray on Shabbos. I didn't really, know his last name, so I saw him at a wedding. So I saw him at a wedding. I was like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm related." I'm like, "What do you mean you're related?" He told me his last name. I'm like, "Really?" I said, "It's pretty amazing. I had no idea." So he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I know the groom before you were born. Right? It was his cousin." So his aunt is the one who made the match between him and my daughter. Right? So that's kind of uncanny also. But, but again, he was learning. He was learning, where I daven. So okay. So he didn't exactly live where I live, but I mean he did because he was learning there, but that worked itself out that way. And then my next daughter, the whole thing. It was the whole thing. My oldest daughter made the match, but it was also based on a lot of things she went through. She started a group for teenagers and great speakers. One of the speakers, the rabbi from Torah, came to speak. And one night, before this class he gave, he said, "Well, maybe you have someone for my son." So she said, "Who's your son? What does he do? Blah, blah, blah." And she said, let's do my sister. It'd be a perfect match. And it went. And it was a perfect match. Right? So now, this thing, my daughter getting engaged now. right? It was, family friends. I know them for many years. Who made the match? His sister, right? The groom's sister, the one who made the match 2 weeks ago. She said, "Oh, what about my brother?" So we put the wheels into motion. Next thing I know, I'm making a l'chaim. Right? So now, when you look back and you look at all the events, each event may be insignificant in and of itself. But now you take the event and you connect the dots and you go step by step by step. Now, I can't say, okay, what exactly led to this and that and the other thing, and exactly what level and different things. That I can't answer. What I can answer is all these things led to me where I am. And the last 2 matches for my kids, are people where I live. That's not a coincidence. Now, how I got here, a lot of suffering to get where I am. Suffering in Israel, suffering outside of Israel, and going through everything in between. There's a lot going on, tremendous amount going on. But guess what? This is what happened in the end, right? So they're going to say, wow, that's great. It's it's a happy ending, right? To a certain extent. So what am I pointing out? God's there behind the scenes. God is orchestrating everything. Orchestrating everything. But when you look at individual events, seemingly each individual event doesn't look significant. But if you look at the book of Esther also, you have a lot of events that don't seem, each event in and of itself doesn't seem significant until you put it in the whole picture. And once you put it in the whole picture, it's a whole different ballgame. Right? A whole different ballgame. Because now you put the pieces together. And once you put the pieces together, each event itself is significant. But you didn't see it at the time. You have to see it over time. You don't see it while they're going through it. This event seems insignificant. The other event seems insignificant. Right? But when you put 2 and 2 together and you see how it all fits in the puzzle, whole different world. Right? The whole different world. But again, we're not privy to that. We're totally not privy to that. Right? But in the end, even though the book of Esther does not mention God's name, you see throughout the book, God is pulling the strings. Right? He's pulling the strings, but the Jews at one point almost got annihilated. But he's still pulling the strings. Right? Takes them out the last second, saves them. Right? But he's there pulling the strings. So we can't think what we go through is insignificant. We may not be able to connect the dots. We may not understand. Right? But at some point, God's going to open our eyes. And God's going to say, you know what? I'm going to show you. And then when you look at it in hindsight and you connect the dots, you say, wow, this is really unbelievable. But the days can be very dark. They can be very gloomy. They can be very hard to get out of bed. A lot of different things. And you're going to say, what in the world's going on? What's the connection with this? We may see no connection at all. We may see that door, this door gets slammed. Another door gets slammed. 13 doors get slammed. But you know what? Another door is going to open. Right? When you're going through it, you're going to say, I don't see it. And I may never see it. You can't say that because God can change anything at any time. Right? I've seen it over and over again. Doesn't mean it necessarily happens. Right? When we want it to, but it certainly can. Right? It certainly can. But imagine when we have that aha moment and God shows us, okay, I'm going to open your eyes now. And I am going to show you. When it comes to marriage, you see this clear. You see, I see it, every one of my kids and how they met their prospective, husband, whatever, and everything, the background and different things. There's nothing to say it's nature. Nothing. Because of all these different events, you're going to say they're all random, totally random, so to speak. So, so many different things. And then all of a sudden, God opens your eyes and he shows you a whole thing. And he says, look at all the groundwork. Look at everything you did and all these connections. Now look what happened. Now look at it and now say, wow, this is unbelievable. That's what it is. But it doesn't mean everything goes the way we plan, everything the way we think. Many, many things we don't understand. You know what? It's okay. It's okay not to understand, right? It's difficult. It's hard. I'm telling you, I had a 17-year odyssey. 17 years I had something in my face on a weekly basis. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. what I had to go through. I mean, now, there's a certain level of clarity now, right? That part at least is over. It's not in my face anymore. You understand how painful that could be? Tremendously painful. You're going to say, God, what are you doing? I had successes, I had losses, I had more losses, different things. And it was very hard because if you're getting knocked around and this is in your face, it makes it impossible, almost impossible. So I always said, okay, when I'm doing much better and things are more, stable, whatever. So fine, it's easier to swallow, much easier to swallow. But if not, and you're getting beaten down and it's rubbed in your face, that's a little bit hard to take. A little bit hard to take. But in the end, with all that, the whole thing, people are pawns. People are used by God for whatever reason. And now you see after 17 years, look at the benefit now I have. Look at the benefit. Tremendous benefit over here. Now, I would say I wish I didn't have to go through all that. But this is the end result. So now when you say the end result and you go backwards, different world. Different world. So, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But we want everything. The problem is we want everything instantaneous. We want this to be fixed now. We want this to be done now. Right? When a person's down, they don't have no idea how they're going to get out of it. They have no idea. And things happen in unbelievably mysterious ways. You could be down for a long time. You could be down for a short amount of time. Nobody knows. Right? But what's the mantra? God, you're the one in charge. You're the one in charge. It's not dependent on me. Right? But you got to believe with all your heart he knows what he's doing. You have to believe that there's a rhyme and a reason. And we're not just thrown in the wind. We're not there just to get beaten down. Right? For sure not. But, when it's very dark outside, it's very hard to see. Very hard to see. Someone asks, take questions now. Someone asks, if marriage is a mitzvah, which it is, right? Definitely true. Should it not then be your free choice? It is our free choice. Right? God puts certain things in our situation. The question is, how much free choice do we really have? Right? That's the question. In other words, when you look at it in the bigger scheme of things, according to nature, right? That's, let's say according to nature, that's how it looks. Let's say according to nature, certain things happen. Right? Isn't that my choice? Right? God knows what's going to be. He puts things into motion. We can choose to do X, we can choose to do Y, right? But ultimately, we do have free choice. A person can choose who they want to marry, who they don't want to marry. Right? A Jew marries a non-Jew. Let's make it clear. That's not God's choice. God doesn't want a Jew to marry a non-Jew. Certainly the person, is not going to convert. And that's not what he wants. Right? So they're marrying the wrong person. God doesn't stop them. God ultimately knows that's going to be the case. So now God has to use the matrix. Why? Because they married the wrong person. They're not having the same kids they should have. So there's a major problem here. So God has to work it out however he does. But doesn't God know? Person may make the wrong choice. Yeah. Does he force them to make the right choice? No. He doesn't force them. Right? Ultimately, God says this person's going to marry that person. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Because we see Jews marry non-Jews. Unfortunately, 60, 70, 80% of the time. So if God chooses that partner, is that partner for them? It's not their partner. If they convert, whatever, different issue. But if they don't convert, like most non-Jews, in this scenario, so they're not marrying the right person. So what happened? They made a choice. Now God has to go to plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. That's what he has to do. And now he has to rework it. So even if we do have free choice, and God says, okay, this person's going to marry that, you have free choice. You can choose not to. The person can choose to intermarry. And many people do. So isn't that a contradiction? It's not a contradiction. God's not forcing people to do. He can put them in the situation to marry the right person. They can choose to or not to. Right? They have free choice. They absolutely have free choice. Not only that, but they can marry the right person and blow it. They can end up getting divorced. Right? And then they're they're half soul again. But you're going to say, so why did God put them together in the first place? Because that's the person they were supposed to marry. Right? But it doesn't always go according to plan. Right? 100%. It doesn't go according to plan. So a person could get divorced. Not a contradiction. Why? Because even if God puts them in our path, and if we do end up, a person marries the right person, who says the marriage is going to last? Who says the marriage is going to last? No guarantee. Definitely no guarantee. Because there's no guarantee, we make our own choices. Now, if a person married the right person, they get divorced. That's what God wants. But he allows people to get divorced. Right? It's not his choice. He doesn't want that. But we blow it. 100% we blow it. Right? So therefore, even a person would marry the right person, it doesn't mean they're going to stay married. It just doesn't mean that. All things being equal, marriage like anything else, you have to work at it. And even if you marry the right person, you don't work at it, it'll die. Right? Take a plant, don't water it. Don't give it sunlight. It'll die. Right? Even if you marry the right person, right? That can happen. Someone asked, I recommend a community based in Florida. Other communities in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. I'll send you an email, different communities there. Somebody asked, do you think it's purify our character to change us? There are many things that are thrown in our path that we have no control over. That we have zero control. So if we don't have control, why are they thrown in our path? So a lot of times it could be because God put them on our path and, he wants to see how we're going to react. There are other things we do to ourselves. And a lot of times we can blame God, say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And God says you transgress the 614th commandment. Don't be stupid. I didn't tell you to do this. I didn't tell you to do that. You did to yourself. Why are you blaming me? A person wants to go in the right direction. The Gemara says God won't stop them. God will help them. They want to go in the wrong direction. God doesn't stop them. Why does God have to stop them? He doesn't have to stop them. So therefore, they go in the wrong direction. Okay, it's their choice. So it could be, again, we're put in certain situations. It could be we're put in certain situations in order to uproot or bring out certain character traits God wants us to. In other words, they're dormant. And if a person's on this certain path, they'll never come out in the way that it should. So God put you on a different path. Let's say God wants to work on, a person's emunah bitachon, right? Belief in God, belief in faith in God and how he runs the world. So person's having it easy. He's not really thinking about that. So he doesn't have to flex those muscles so much. So what does God do? He says, okay, but I want to bring them out. I want this person to be able to give over to others. Tell over others the story, this, that, to give them strength. So what does God do? He squeezes the person to do that. I gotta say, that's not fair. The person doesn't deserve it. But God has his ways of bringing out certain things that would never come out naturally. In my case, I use myself as an example again, right? So in my case, I had plenty of money, right? I'm not saying, I didn't pray. I didn't pray with a fervor. It's a lot different when you have a bill to pay. You have no idea where the money's coming from. Right? They're about to cut off your electricity or who knows what. Right? You pray a heck of a lot more different than you would, if you have tons of money in the bank. Right? So now it could be, I'm just throwing this out there. It could very well be God says, you know what? I want to, I'm going to squeeze you for any number of reasons, but I'm going to squeeze you to the point where you're going to be so much stronger. You're going to give this over to others. You're going to strengthen others. They can say, but so why squeeze me? Because the way you need to strengthen others is you have to go through it and you have to feel the pain, right? And you have to go through all that because if you don't, you go into the motions. You can't empathize, right? It's very hard. It's like the Mission Pirkei Avos says, you can't comment to somebody about something unless you've been in their shoes. If you've been in their shoes, you have what to say. If you haven't been in their shoes, you can empathize. And that's what some people want. They just want you to empathize. But if you haven't been in their shoes, that's about the best you can do. But if you've been in their shoes, you give a lot more strength. A lot more strength. Right? There's no question. And I can tell you from personal experience, I'm not the same person I was. No question. Been on both sides. Definitely not the same person. Right? So again, I would have wished certain things would have turned out a little bit different. Okay. But at the end of the day, it transformed and made me who I am. So what did God do? So he squeezed me that way. And he says, I want to bring out this character trait, which would never come out otherwise. I want to bring it out. I want you to strengthen others. I want you to give it over. So how am I going to do it? God says, let me think. How am I going to do it? That's how he did it. But it wasn't just a one-shot deal. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to squeeze him for a little bit of time. This was a 17-year odyssey. Right? Not just being squeezed. Again, sometimes it was better. Sometimes it was worse. Right? But having something in your face for 17 years, yeah, that's a little bit painful. That's a little bit painful. And being kicked when you're down, that's painful. It's extremely painful. Right? Someone can say, yeah, I've had a difficulty. You can't understand that. Oh, I can understand. No empathy from anybody, being kicked in the face, being hit when you're down. I can definitely understand. It happens. It happens. Empathy. There are people who don't even know what the word means. Not at all. Again, I got hit from both sides of the mouth. You had money, should have done this. You don't have money, you should have done that. You can't have it both ways. Doesn't work both ways. Right? You can't play, backseat quarterback over here. You want to help? Very good. You want to give strength? Very good. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut. Why are you making someone feel worse? Why are you beating them down? Right? That's what happened. Certain times, I didn't lash out. When someone said something to me, they hit me in the head. I said, I want you to remember one thing. I didn't raise my voice, whatever. I said, you never, ever hit a person when they're down. When a person's angry, what does the Mishnah Pirkei Avos say? Says in ethics of our fathers, you don't say anything. You let them vent, you don't say anything because they're never going to listen. All the more so. Somebody's down. They're feeling bad about themselves. You don't take a sledgehammer and slam them. Yeah, maybe you want to light a fire under them so they'll do something else. And then, maybe that's, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. I don't think so. Not in my case anyway. Right? But that was my answer. That was my answer. You never, ever hit someone when they're down. And people do. People do. I had someone make a comment and, many years ago, and they didn't mean anything bad by it. And they said, well, if you're at the bottom, the only place you can go is up, which is true. But I didn't want to hear that. I certainly didn't want to hear that. I understand what the person meant, and it is, it is a consolation to a certain extent because, yeah, if you hit rock bottom, person's a drug addict or whatever, you hit rock bottom, you lose everything. The only place is to go up. That's true. But when you're at rock bottom or, you're suffering, you don't want to hear that. It's true, but you don't want to hear it. Right? Somebody asks, totally different topic here. Accepting Jewish, both oral and written tradition. There are people wanting to convert that don't accept what the rabbis say. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a Torah prohibition. Because the Torah tells me in the book of Deuteronomy, you have to listen to what the Kohanim, what the priests say in every generation. Who are the Kohanim? They're the rabbis of every generation. Right? Don't you have to accept everything to be able to convert? Yeah. If a person, comes to a rabbinical court and they say, well, they ask you going to hold with the stringencies, the leniencies and all that. They said, yeah, but, this thing of milk and chicken, it's only rabbinical. I'm not doing it. If it's a woman, she's married, she says, yeah, I'm not going to cover my hair. Basin's not going to look at them. Because you have to accept everything. You're right, you have to accept everything. So how can some people not accept oral law? It's a problem. I don't have an easy answer. It's a problem. Right? You have to accept everything. 100%. Right? One of the things, I'll tell you a story, rabbinical court here, took two of my students and they asked them, it was before Rosh Hashanah, they were ready to convert. It was before Rosh Hashanah, so the rabbi said, if we told you, you have to move to a stronger community. What would you do? They said, well, do whatever you tell us to do. If we told you, we're going to keep you as non-Jews, you're not going to be able to convert till after all the holidays. You have to go through Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. You have to go through all the holidays still as a non-Jew. You have to, that's great Shabbos, that's great the holiday, the festival and all that. What would you say? Right? And what was the answer? What was the answer they said? They said, it doesn't matter. Whatever you tell us to do, that's what we're going to do. I was like, yeah, that's the right answer. That's the right answer. You do what they tell you to do. Right? We're holding by, Jewish law. You do what the rabbis tell us. Kashrus, holidays, blessings, Lashon Hara, all these things. So how can some people say, oh, I'm not going to keep this. I'm not going to listen to the rabbis on that. They can't. If they say that to the rabbinical court, they'll never convert them. Right? They'll never convert them. It's all or nothing. Right? But they have to believe in oral law. It's a hard thing, I understand. It's a hard thing for non-Jews. Right? Why should we listen to men? Why should we listen to the rabbi? It's the whole thing. I get it, but it's forbidden. 100% forbidden. Right? You have to accept what they say. How can you not accept what the rabbis say? How can a person say, I'm just going to do what I want? That's what they're saying. There was a rapper that went through a certain rabbinical court. And this rapper said, he's going to keep, all Torah mitzvahs, but he wants to rap like he used to, in front of crowds, this and that. And the rabbinical court said no. The rabbinical court said, we don't want you doing this. Right? We don't want you doing this. Do it in a different way, but not this way. They wouldn't convert him. And this person was defiant. I'm sure he converted somewhere else. But he didn't convert to this rabbinical court. Why not? They have a reputation. They don't want someone who, who's going to go back to that world, which is bad. Right? They're going to say, oh, we converted him, and look what he's doing. Desecration of God's name. No question about it. Right? So something like that, what are they testing as well? They're testing the person to see if he's really willing to listen to the rabbinical court. If he's going to listen to what we call Das Torah, is he going to listen to what the rabbis say? And this person said no. Said he was defiant. This is what I want to do. They didn't convert him. Now I'm sure he converted somewhere else, not through this rabbinical court though. Right? So it's pretty crucial. You have to listen to what the rabbis say. How can some people say otherwise? It's their problem. Totally their problem. Right? Rabbinical court will not convert them. It's forbidden, 100%. Someone asks, one of the rabbis don't agree with each other. It depends on what? It depends on, if they're on the same side, it's a different issue. If they're on the same side and they agree, right? There are differences of opinion, different things in Shabbos and other things, different customs between Ashkenazim, Sephardim, fine, but that doesn't mean I'm not listening to the rabbis, right? And let's say there's a difference of opinion in certain things. How are you going to decide what to do? You ask your rabbi what to do. He'll tell you what to do, right? But you have to listen. If they disagree with each other, but each one has their own customs, and it's still within, Jewish tradition, fine. That's not a problem. That's not an issue. I mean, if you're talking about heresy and other things, that's something else. Somebody points out Nissim Black converted. You're right. Right? He definitely did. He still raps, but he does it in a kosher way. I happen just not to like rap in general. So I can't listen to it whether it's a kosher way or not. That's just my own thing. Right? But he's doing it in a kosher way. This other person wanted to do it in a non-kosher way. And the Basin said, no, absolutely not. We don't want our reputation on the line with that. Right? They absolutely said no. Someone asked, am I going to be your rabbi going through this? I hope so. Right? The only thing I can't do is be a sponsoring rabbi. Is to vouch for people in the community, right? Because I don't live there. But certainly writing a letter vouching for them in front of Basin that I can do. Right? 100%. So there are certain things that I would say you just don't. You just don't do. And you have to listen. There are many times, I've been going through a Sternbuch for 25 years. I'm not going to say I listen to every last thing, that he said. But, in the end, whatever he told me to do, I asked him all kinds of complicated things. I deal with family, other things. I didn't come out smelling like a rose listening to him. Trust me. Got a lot of flack for things he told me. Okay, but I listened. I did what he told me to do. Wasn't popular by any stretch. People didn't like it. As he would say, go eat kugel. Let him eat kugel. Who cares? You're doing what the Torah told you to do. You got slammed. They don't like it. They think it's fanatical. Not my problem. I'm doing what the Torah told me. Doing what the rabbis told me. Did it make me look good? No. Many times didn't make me look good. Well, guess what? That's the way it goes. People don't like it. They don't like it. I told people this. You don't like it? Okay. I'm not, this is what we're willing to do. You want to meet us halfway? You want to make a compromise? We'll talk. You don't? People got offended. What can you do? Certain things you can't do. Certain things you can't do. You can't do. People don't like it. They think you're a fanatic. Okay. I've been called a fanatic. I've been called a lot worse. But at the end of the day, I'm not losing sleep over it. Right? It's annoying in different ways, but I'm not going to change. This is the way it is. Can't turn the Torah into a pretzel. Right? Can't turn the Torah into a pretzel. That's the bottom line. And you got to stand up for Torah even if it's not popular. Even if you get threatened. Even if they say we'll cut you off with it. Okay, so cut me off. Do whatever you want. We have certain standards. You want to come to my community, you dress a certain way. You don't want to, that's your choice. I told someone this. They said, I come to your community, I'll dress any way I want. I said, you won't come. I said, you just won't come. They're like, you would tell me that? I said, I would tell you that to your face. No offense. I said, you wouldn't go to the Western Wall in tank tops and a short. You're not going to come to my community and do the same thing. Were they offended? Probably. I mean, I did it in a joking way. Right? Were they offended? Probably. But I said, these are the standards. You wouldn't walk into a Japanese restaurant and say, I'm not taking off my shoes. I'm not sitting on pillows. They're going to say, no shoes, no food. Of course, they have respect for that. That's food. They don't have respect for what you do. That's a different issue. Totally different issue. Right? The bottom line, we're not going to make everybody happy. Probably not going to make too many people happy. We have to make ourselves happy. We have to make God happy. We have to do what he wants us to do, even if it's unpopular. That's what we have to do. A lot of people I grew up with think it's nuts. My oldest daughter got married at 18. My other daughter's at 19, 20. They think it's absolutely crazy. Right? They think it's absolutely insane. And so, if they would come on a Shabbos, and they would see, my whole family, that'd be overkill because it's kind of loud, with 6 grandkids and whatever. But, if they would see and they see the beauty, people singing, eating, saying words of Torah, other things, how can you say it doesn't work? And they'll never have it. These people will never have it. But, I showed somebody this, and, someone had met my kids, pretty much, and, they came, walked into my house, and most of my kids were there, most of my married kids were there, and one son-in-law walks in, 10 minutes later, another son-in-law walks in, someone else walks in, I got 15 people, just myself, just my own family. It's it's an unbelievable thing to see, right? So it can be overwhelming, but they were overwhelmed by emotion. How can you not be overwhelmed by emotion? It's an unbelievable thing to see. There's no question. They can say, yeah, you're fanatic this, fanatic that, fanatic the other thing. They don't have what I have. They weren't at the L'chaim, on Monday. This family that I know, for many years, et cetera, and a lot of the married kids, a bunch of the married kids that I know, and everything else, and worth millions that I don't have, worth millions, right? And some people will never see that ever. They'll never see it, but I've had a merit to see it, right? See it in front of my face, miraculous, absolutely miraculous. It's beautiful. There's no question. No question about it. So yeah, people can make jokes and people can say, whatever they want. They see a real type of wedding, and they see what it really is. You're overwhelmed by emotions, no question. They may say it's not for me, but this is unbelievable. Right? And that I've heard a number of times from different people. Oh, I would never choose that lifestyle, but this is beautiful. But some people they're just never gonna have it. Right. So at the same time, you can't look back. You can't look back, you have to look forward. As my Rebbe says, if you live in the past, you have no future. Right. But so you can say, well, again, I use myself as an example, suffer this way, that way, the other way, and what's the end result here? Unbelievable. Still have a connection. One of the Torah giants saw him the other day, on the fast day on Tuesday, wished him mazel tov for, a daughter getting engaged, saw the smile, worth millions. No question. It should be well, no question about it. It's unbelievable from where I came from. So again, would I have wished certain things would have turned out a little bit different? Yeah. But at the end of the day, with all that and all the perseverance, look what was merited. You can't put a price on that. Certainly can't put a price on that. And when you see, they say it's a benefit when a child gets married, you get along with the other side. It's a benefit. It doesn't always happen. But when you see two families mesh and they're like one family, then you see how unbelievable it works. Right? And it's whatever, there's no words to put, there's no real words to say over here. But I've been through the ringer for a long time, in different things. And, the end result is what it is. So plenty to be thankful for, plenty. But even without all that, back on that topic, even without all that, we still have plenty to be thankful for. Plenty. We just, as we always say, get beaten down in life. 100% get beaten down in life. There's no, there's no question. There's no question, about it. The only thing is, we go through life. It doesn't always, go the way we planned. But again, I was by my Rebbe on Tuesday, for a short amount of time, seeing that smile. If I would, it's right in front of my face. I can see it in front of my face. We're taking the picture, worth millions. There's no question. But there was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of sweat. There's a lot of tears. When it, over the years, a lot of suffering goes with it. But in the end, we're still fighting God's army. We're still up and around. And we're going to struggle. We're going to have difficulties. We're going to have other things. Whatever it is. But when you see that it works unbelievably. And even when a person suffers, there's a purpose behind it. Right? There's a purpose. We may not see it. We may not fathom it. And it could be down the line. Could be years down the line. You might get this aha moment. And you might connect the dots and you say, unbelievable. Might happen. That might not happen. Right? But if you're able to do that at some level and you see how doors were shut and doors open, that's where you see divine providence. That's where it's clear. Even if the days are dark. So, there's no question. But yet you have to be very strong. You got to be very strong in this process. You have to have, you just can't worry about what people are going to say, other things. You have to persevere because the evil inclination is going to beat you down, going to beat me down forever. Going to just say, what do I need this for? I helped out all these people. God, this is what you do. I never said that. What I'm going to, I'm going to spit in his face for all the goodness that he's done. But when you get beaten down, you do things and you say things that, only just because you're getting beaten down in life. But you forget about all the goodness, that's there. And again, sometimes you'll see it in hindsight, most likely. You'll see it in hindsight, but when you connect some of the dots, it's clear. And you say, and what'll happen, you say, wow, I was worried about this, worried about that. And God took care of it in the end. Might not have been pretty, but everything was taken care of. So a person says, so what was I worried about? What was I worried about over here? God says, yeah. You wasted a lot of emotional energy for nothing. Because I took care of it in the end anyway. Right? God's there behind the scenes. God is there. Right? We just have to be able to see it and have him open our eyes and connect the dots. Right? Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. Right? But in the end, That's what we got to do. If someone says, is it proper to talk to the rabbinical court before starting the process? I would say it's a waste of time. Rabbinical court's not going to do that much unless you live within walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue. You can contact them, ask them advice, maybe what community to be in, other things. But a lot of times it's a waste of time. In my opinion, if a person's committed, they're in the process, they're starting to do things, one thing. If they're not in the process, they're not keeping, not starting to keep kosher, not starting to do other things, then I would say it's a total waste of time. They're going to say, well, how do we know you're serious? But if a person wants, I'm not going to say they can't. If a person wants to contact a rabbinical court, they certainly can, no question. But they should be holding somewhere where, they're keeping some mitzvahs, doing something. If they're not doing very much, then rabbinical court probably not going to take you too seriously. Any other questions? A person is worried about rejection. Well, you gotta have broad shoulders. You got to fight. Even if they give you a hard time, etc. You just got to do what you need to do. Because at the end of the day, they're gonna give you a hard time. They may reject you, etc. But you gotta persevere, right? If a person's not willing to persevere, etc., and take their lumps as they go, then it's going to be a very lonely process. And it's going to be a process you won't be able to do because you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get thrown around a little bit. They're going to test you. They're going to put you have to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. That's what you got to do. Not easy. Not going to say it's easy, but, you just have to realize that whatever the rabbinical court is going to tell you, that's what you have to do. Right. And you're going to listen to them, and that's what they want to hear. That is exactly what they want to hear. You can question certain things. I'm not saying you can't question them and say, what about this? What about that? etc. But you have to remember, you're on the outside looking in. They're the ones calling the shots. So a person has to show humility. People don't like to show humility. I don't know why. All right. They think, the Jewish community owes them everything. We don't owe anybody anything. You want to come to us. You come to us based on our terms, not your terms. Right? I'm not saying anyone necessarily here is doing that. I've heard it enough times. The rabbinical court owes me this. Jewish community owes me that. Go to a priest and say, I'm going to convert, but you're not putting any water on me. I ain't going to the swimming pool, not in the bathtub. Go to a mosque and say, I'm only willing to take on certain things. I'm not willing to take on anything else. They're not going to take you seriously. Right? The person comes to the rabbinical court and says, you owe me. You owe me. What do you mean I owe you? What does the Jewish community owe anybody? You want to listen to the rules, you follow the rules. You don't want to listen to the rules, then why waste our time? Right? But you're not making your own conditions. I'm not saying you can't ask questions, but you're not making your own conditions. People cop an attitude. Bothers me. You're on the outside looking in. On the world, you cop an attitude. It would never be accepted in any other religion, quote unquote. If there are certain things you have to do, tell the priest, I ain't going into the water. I ain't going in the ocean. I ain't going anywhere. No water. I'm allergic to water. He's going to look at you like you're a fruitcake. You say, okay, maybe he'll push it aside and say, hey, you don't have to do it. But if it's something that's crucial, to converting or whatever, to any other religion, what are you going to say? I'm not going to do it? They're going to say next. And the Muslims say, you probably deserve to die anyway. You're an infidel anyway. You don't have a right to say anything. You got to listen to what they tell you. Right? You have to show a little bit of humility. I think it's incredulous that some people have no humility. They think we owe everybody everything. You don't owe anybody. You want to come to us, you come on our terms, not on your terms. You ask the rabbinical court, can I do this? What about this? What about that? And they'll tell you what to do. You're not dictating. Nobody's dictating. Person can see. They're one of my pet peeves. Bothers me. It's just incredulous. Some people cop an attitude. You just got to listen to what they say. You say, whatever the rabbinical court tells me, that's what I'm going to do. And that's it. That's what you have to do. Yeah. Any other questions? First, 40 minutes walk from a synagogue. 40 minutes. Okay, that's in striking distance. So if it's within walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue, I'm not saying you can't contact a rabbinical court. I would say if a person's been taking classes, for a number of months, and they're really learning, they come to the rabbinical court and they say, listen, I've been learning this, learning that, I'm keeping this, I'm keeping that. You're coming a lot stronger than if you come off the street. But not everyone agrees. Other rabbis would tell you, you live in a walking distance, contact the rabbinical court straight away. I don't think they're going to do very much for you. Person wants to do it, I'm not saying they can't do it. They can. I'm just saying they're not going to do that much for you. Right? They're probably not going to do that much. But if a person comes in with a certain, I'm not saying you have to have years and years of knowledge. But if a person has been taking classes and they're learning whatever, they come into the rabbinical court much stronger. Much, much stronger. Yeah. Any other comment? Someone says got to get only nearest community is the Reformed community. Yeah. Got to get out of Dodge. Bottom line. I got to be within walking distance at some point. Of an Orthodox synagogue. Right. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop there. I do this every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, feel free. If I'm on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or Michael Chaim Coffman, you can send me an email, rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, or end of the day, or